Hey everybody, it's Prajesh here.
And Tane here.
Welcome to our podcast, Baskets of Knowledge, Chats with a Difference. In our podcast, we invite guests from around the country and around the world to talk about how they got to where they're at the moment. It's about a journey, it's about an experience, it's about their life. Kia ora koutou, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Baskets of Knowledge. A little bit different this week. We don't have any guests, but we thought that, hey, we have some amazing followers and some people that follow us all the time, and we don't want to disappoint you. So we are going to just have a chat, Tane and myself today. We haven't had Tane on for a while. So what we thought we'd do is we'd just talk about Tane and what he's been doing this over the last few weeks. Tane, how are you going?
Yeah, good. It's been a busy couple of weeks. Everything ramping up again that time of year with trying to finish my research and then, finishing up with some of my rugby coaching commitments, which has been, an interesting time for reflection. And it feels weird when you have such a massive part of your life just kind of disappear for a little bit for you.
Yeah, and I get it's a great time for us to have a chat because at this point in time, lots of things are coming to a close for you and also starting for you. So it's the end of the year. Your honours thesis is due in a week's time, but also at the same time, the rugby season is closed for you. So just for today, we'll talk about both things actually. Let's talk about the rugby league season. If I said to you, hey Tane, in January that you'd be involved in this, what would you have said to me? If I said, hey Jan, you'd be involved with these young people, what would you have thought?
I definitely wouldn't have thought I would have taken up all the opportunities that I did. At the start, I guess last year when I seen the promotion about taking up the role, I just thought, it's something cool to try. And as you know, I like to apply for things, so I thought, why not? I'll chuck my name in the hat. But at the same time, I knew I had little to no coaching experience. The only real coaching experience I had was year 13, helping a year 5 and 6 team. So applying to be an assistant coach, partly because I didn't think I had the qualifications to be a trainer, meant it was quite a big jump and quite a big reality shift when I did get the role. And it probably helped that I knew a few people through Otago Rugby League and have played rugby league myself in the men's comp down here in Dunedin. But when I got that first role, I thought, okay, I'll go along, see what it's like. And I remember going to that first training and it was a complete shock to go from, not really having much experience to the head coach being like, what kind of games or drills do you have planned for the girls? And, what are we going to do? And so I was like, man, I need to, obviously plan a bit better, which is one of my big learnings. But, from that initial taste, I realized that it was actually something that I was quite passionate about. And I think as a player, you don't really, identify how much a coach is willing to do for you, how much coaches put in behind the scenes, but also, to see that reciprocal side of all the things that a coach does that, goes not necessarily unappreciated, but I guess unbeknownst to the players, meant that I've just had this drive the whole year to, make opportunities available for the girls and, also take up opportunities for myself so that I could grow from a coach, that came in with little to no experience to going to, one of the higher roles for rugby league within the South Island.
That's very cool. I think, Tana, there's two things here. First of all, you applied for a role that you're like, okay, whatever, just give it a shot. But the second thing was also going to a female coaching role, which is very, very different. And what is that like for you? Because obviously you said before that you've been involved in rugby league in the men's comp, and that's been your sport for a long time. But this is totally different. What is that like for you working with people athletes that are not males, I guess?
Yeah, it's been a very interesting transition and something I guess I reflect on and just how well you need to do as a coach when you're going in and, especially me going into the female space or girl space for rugby league. And I guess it's quite funny because I'd always, the last couple of years, there's been a few times where because rugby league's been a big part of my life, I've always thought it would be, I'd want to be involved with it in some capacity. And I guess there was always a slight inclination that I wanted to get into the women's space just because I can see how much growth there is, but also just, the ability to learn something different and learn something new with these athletes. And so I think they're two completely different games. If you think about, how you coach boys compared to how you coach girls. And I think for me, I guess part of it was stepping away from my growing up, always being in rep teams and playing and, playing in school teams and stuff like that to then go, okay, I'm going to have a different experience by coaching girls. And I think for me, probably the biggest thing, well, there's a few learnings. I guess the first one is just how much of external factors play into the female game and the female space. I think there's a lot more room where you have to build their confidence and you have to build them as a person rather than focus on skills and drills and getting them to that top playing ability, because there's so many other factors that dictate whether they stay in the sport. I also think in terms of coaching them in general, you need to be a lot more precise in what it is you're trying to deliver to the girls. I think being around boys, playing growing up, and then also seeing some of those spaces, I think because boys grow up playing rugby or rugby league at such an early age, by the time, if I was to go into the same space at, say, Otago Boys or one of those high schools here in Dunedin, it would be a lot easier to explain things because I wouldn't have to be clear cut on what it is. I could give a general gist and the boys will pick up what I'm trying to explain to them. But when I do the same within the girls' context, it's a lot more finer details that they want to know. And they ask a lot of questions. And I think that's a very valuable thing to have as a coach, because coming in, obviously, I've played a lot and so I have a lot of understanding and knowledge of the game. But being able to deliver it to people who haven't necessarily played for a very long time and do so that they understand, what it is you're trying to achieve. I think that's been a huge takeaway, is that, you really need to have a sound understanding of the game. I think too, like just girls in general, it's a completely different environment, as I say, in terms of you build their confidence, but you also want to find that fun aspect. And I think, girls more so, if you don't make trainings or the game enjoyable, they're not going to stick around because there's other things that they could be doing. Whereas I think boys, it may just be a conditioning thing, but, they're so accustomed to going through the hard yards, constantly doing, I remember so many times playing myself growing up, and you got to do fitness or you got to do, tests that seemingly break you. But if I was to do the same thing with these girls, half of them wouldn't come back. And that's not to say that there's an issue around mental resilience or different or anything like that. It's just, again, saying they're two completely different games. And so you have to adjust. And I think that's something that we still see struggles within the women's game, as a lot of coaches come over from coaching boys and they don't look at those small subtleties and they think that what works in the boys' game is going to work in the girls' game, which, isn't the case.
It's crazy because you have to, it's a learning process, right? You don't, like you said before, you just came in and you're like, okay, cool, I've got to start from scratch, but your scratch is actually starting from a real scratch, because it's a whole different ball game. And I just remember reading something last week or 2 weeks ago saying that in order to be able to be good at something, you have to be able to explain to a 5-year-old. And like you said before, a lot of the times we're conditioned. So you said before, like if you were coaching males, you just say a play and people would know what it was. And if they didn't know, they just would just make it up and they'd get a gist. Whereas with some people, and we're going to use the female context in this example, where you have to break it right down to explain what it actually means. But this is also where you can find your own shortfalls, because if you don't know what you're actually saying, they're going to catch you out straight away. And that reminds me, when I first started my job, I went from an academic space into a high school space, and I went in with all this preconceived knowledge of undergrad, postgrad, all these terminologies, and I just assumed my audience would understand it straight away, until somebody said to me, "Hey, what do you actually mean by undergrad?" I was like, "Oh, what do you mean by percentage?" I was like, "Oh," I was like, those assumptions that we have, like I said before, we're just preconditioned, and we just have to assume that everybody knows nothing. I always learned that you assume at the lowest level that nobody knows anything, and if they do know it, it's fine, because everyone's going to learn at the same time. But that's quite a crazy learning as we go into whatever space sets you up for some pretty cool things as you go forward, whether it's in rugby league or whatever you end up doing. That you have to look at different, like everyone's different, and we can't do things different. We can't, yeah. What has been the highlight for you? So there must be tons of highlights for you, but if you were going to summarize maybe 3 highlights from the year in the rugby league space, what has it been for you, Tane?
Oh, 3 highlights. Yeah, it is tough because there is so many highlights. I guess my first thing is getting some of our girls into the South Island Scorpions space. We struggled to get a team together in July, and we went up against Canterbury, and we played pretty well. In the first half, we were only down a try, and by the end of the game, the score blew out, but it didn't really reflect how the girls had gone. But to have 3 girls that came up with us from Southland, and then have a couple of our Otago girls also make that South Island Scorpions team was just a huge credit to them. And I think, again, that's what I realized is because it can be a struggle at time with the sport being so small in Dunedin, and particularly competing with rugby. I think it is a challenging space to, try and show these girls that there's the opportunities there, but also showing them why it is beneficial for them to go to these opportunities. It's hard to sell things when not many people see the limelight and the hard work and, the travel, everything like that, that these players do. So for me, the highlight of, seeing some of these girls, and especially the Southland girls who, if we didn't take them on board, they probably wouldn't have got that opportunity to go to the next level. It just shows that sometimes if you're willing to put in that work and, sacrifice that time and effort, it does pay off for the players. And that's the biggest thing for me is if you can, I don't care if these girls don't want to take up the opportunity because that's their decision, but I'd be disheartened if we didn't at least try for their sake. Another highlight, probably just going away on the tournaments and seeing how much the girls grow outside of the game. Like we, from the start of the year to the last tournament we just had, we identified that the girls have learned a lot of basics, that we had to go over at the start of the year, and they've grown so much on the field. But I think off the field, getting to know just their life story, and I think that's so much. It's such a benefit if you can know your players outside of just, what they can do on the field. I know these girls, I know what schools they go to, I know, what their situation is around study or work or other factors in their life. And it just means that they know that I can relate to them, but they also understand that I support them if they can't come to training because they've got other commitments or other worries. And I think as a coach, it's easy to look at my sport as the only sport that you should be playing. And I think sometimes we miss that they're still young people. They're still learning about themselves and about their own lives. And so it's our job really to just, again, say, here's these opportunities, but, there's so many cool things that these girls are out there doing. And I guess I'm grateful that I'm just a small part of that in reality, and that I get to see them grow. And I think that will be the exciting thing next year is, knowing them over the couple of years and seeing how far they go. Yeah, it's going to be cool to see the longevity of whatever it is their growth is. And then I guess the third thing is just more of a personal one in terms of me just being able to grow my connections within the coaching space, and I guess learn so much about myself as well. I think coaching, you don't really identify as, well, you identify as a coach as a leader, but I think there's so much more to what a coach encompasses. And I think we often forget that we're still learning too. And I guess that was probably my biggest learning going into these spaces, was having the humility to say to the girls sometimes that I don't know, like in terms of rules, in terms of, other life decisions that they've got to make, is taking that step back and going, actually, I'm still learning too. And I think it's so tough when you take on one of these roles because you're in tune to think that you have to know everything because you're the coach. And if you don't know it, then how are these girls or any people that you're coaching going to learn if you don't have the answers? But in actuality, it makes them realize that you understand enough that you can say to them, I don't know, but I can go and find the answers, or I don't know, but let's try and figure it out together. And I think if you can create that collaborative process with the girls, it makes trainings a lot more fun because they're having a say in what you're actually doing rather than I'm the coach, so what I say goes. And so it's really been cool, again, to be able to collaborate with the girls, to be able to change things up because they want to change things. And I think that's what I want to do is, give them that opportunity that they feel comfortable in doing so, because again, a lot of coaches don't give that freedom for the girls to say, hey, this isn't working. And I think, yeah, simply by listening, I've learned a lot about what things they want to change and need to change, but also, and I allow them to do that. And I think that's just a cool way or a cool opportunity to give, again, grow their confidence and show them that they can do the things they want to.
Those are all great learnings there. And I think that the biggest thing there that I can pick away from the timer is the last one, because I think the last one is the one that anyone can take away, because it's the fact that saying I don't know is really hard. We are built in a world where you have to seem to know the answer all the time. And if you don't know, then people think you're weak or you don't know. The perception in your mind is you think, oh, if I say I don't know, then people think they're going to think X, Y, Z about me, bad about me. So I think that's a fantastic learning, not just for in the coaching realm, but in the realm that, hey, should I pause? I'm just going to pause. Yeah, and we're back. So, like I was saying, just the ability to say I don't know is really quite massive. And, I don't know, but I'll find out is one of the most powerful words I think that we can have, especially when you're in any leading position, whether it's coach, teaching, leadership, HR, whatever it is. So I think, that's beautiful. But also love that how you have in your space that you've realized that, hey, these are still young people, they are playing rugby league and it's just one cog in their life, and life has got so many different cogs for them. And we see lots of people whether it's a sport or an activity or social program, that they go, hey, this is my world. And just because it's your world, it doesn't have to be, it's everyone else's world. And the fact that you acknowledge that, hey, there's a lot more going on for these young people. And hey, they don't have to come to training because they want something else. And they have choice. Sometimes you have to, I guess sometimes you're like, okay, let's justify those choices there. And they will listen to you when you understand where they come from. So yeah, I thought those are really, really beautiful, beautiful highlights that you have there. And obviously the growth of the Southland Girls is fantastic. And what are the big challenges for you? So if we take two challenges, I know you mentioned some at the start, but as you go through the year and you think about yourself as a young person, not just in the space here, but in the space and context of what else you're doing. What are some of we'll go three challenges actually. So we've got three highlights, three challenges, three of your biggest challenges, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, good question. I think probably my first challenge was regarding just how much time and commitment goes into coaching. And I think, again, it's underappreciated how much a coach really does. And I guess for me, the challenge was finding that time around everything else that I was doing, while still giving coaching justice. And I think, because I've come into it fresh and I realized pretty quick that it was something I really enjoyed, I took on a lot of opportunities, both helping with rugby here at Columba and just saying yes to, South Island Scorpions, applying for that and getting that role as the under-16s trainer for the girls. And, I guess the challenge with that is that by the end of it, I was burnt out. And I think that's just an approach for me and a realization for me that, if I want to do this, I need to sacrifice other things. And sometimes it's hard to bite that bullet. It's not an easy pill to swallow, but it's the reality of, wanting to do these things justice. So I think for me, the challenge is next year, what opportunities do I want to take up and what opportunities do I just want to still support, but stand on the side of? And I think that's what I've learned to appreciate the last couple of months. Like the girls have been playing in women's sevens tournaments and they've got school sevens. There's been Māori rugby that I wasn't involved with, but I still had the opportunity to go watch their games on the weekend. And so I'm still there supporting, even if it isn't in that coaching role. That, of course, I would love that opportunity, but I have to be mindful that I can't do it all. And I think that is this huge challenge for coaches, because you want to see the success of every one of your players. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in that coaching position to begin with. So it's being able to, realize how much time you put into it without, overcommitting yourself and burning yourself out. And I guess it was hard because at the time, like I thought I was doing fine and I was checking in with myself. But yeah, sometimes you just don't realize until everything slows down a bit. So that was probably the first challenge.
And I guess, can I just comment? And I guess,
Yeah.
is having known you over the last few years, I think this is something that's not just a coaching challenge. It's something that's about your personality, that when you want to go into something, you want to give it 100%. So, if you think back and step back about over the last few years, the last time you felt burnt out again was because you committed to being the best subordinate you could be, or being the best, whatever your role was, you wanted to be the best. And there's nothing wrong with that there. But like you said before, you have to realize that, okay, sometimes trying to be the best is also not being the best for myself, So I think it's a testament not of being trying to be a good coach, but also of you as a person going, hey, I want to be the best that I can for everyone else.
Yeah.
Then you forget about yourself in that
100%.
that craziness there.
Yeah. A second challenge, I think, for me was trying to learn what my coaching philosophy was and is. And I guess it still is a challenge for me, but, trying to know what my core values were, trying to know how I would navigate the whole coaching scene. And knowing what to stick true to. And I think that's challenged when you meet other coaches, when you go to workshops, when you learn so much about the coaching space. And again, it's been a huge challenge for me to try and figure out how you meld all those considerations into one, and knowing which ones to focus on and which ones to let slide. And I think, because there's parents, there's work, there's school, there's other sports, there's family, there's a million
Life, right?
considerations that,
Yeah.
there's life that you've got to consider. And, they're also individually different, that you got to try and figure it all out on the fly. But I think for me, something that's been quite powerful is I've been able to, again, know my players and know the girls outside of what's happening just on the training field, but also come to learn that all those considerations are there, but being confident that when you go into a training, you don't have to have all of those things weighing on you and worrying about, have I done right by all of these other things? Because, for me, it got to a point where I'm like, oh, I need to consider so much that I would get to training and I would be worrying about those instead of enjoying the training itself. And if you're wanting to be a coach that enjoys it and fulfills, and wants to take up the most of this opportunity, you have to realize that when you get to the training, it's about focusing on the right thing at the right time, rather than worrying about all these other considerations that don't need to be considered. And I think, as a coach, you come to learn that you are considering these things, even if you aren't thinking about it all the time. I don't have to be worrying all the time about what parents think of, when trainings are happening, or, in terms of going away and what we're doing with the girls. Like, yes, it's a consideration and it's something that I think about, but I don't have to worry about it 24/7, because otherwise you run into the problem of always worrying that you're doing wrong, and it takes away from your ability to be a coach that is confident in what they're doing. And so that's been a huge challenge. And again, when I'm coming up and meeting coaches who have been doing it for the past 5-10 years, meeting coaches who have done it at a New Zealand level, and meeting coaches that it's hard to try and compare yourself to these coaches. And I guess that leads into my last challenge, which is trying not to compare yourself to other coaches that have been in the space. It's like any job or role that you go into. It's so easy to look at other people and go, oh, how am I going to get there when that, to their successful level? But, they all started somewhere as well. And I think there's been a lot of positives that I've taken from this year, and a lot of small things that I do right. And I think that's what I need to take away, is I know the positive things for me. I've been people have told me about how good I've been in terms of building trust with the girls, even if I don't know them for very long. And that was true going into the Scorpions campaign, only knowing two of the girls. And by the end of it, knowing all of them pretty well and knowing some of their other stuff outside of the sport in a 2-month time frame shows that I can build that trust and have that ability to know the players. But on the other side, I've got to challenge myself that there are areas that I want to get better in. The ability to, for me, I struggle to communicate my message well, but also keep things on track, because I like to be the fun coach that plays games and, can have a bit of a laugh and stuff like that. But also, how do I find that ability to, as I say, bring the players in when we need to, so that we can get done what we need to get done. And I think that's what I've learned, is you need a good coaching partner that works really well with you. And that's what worked really well for rugby league was, as I say, I'm much more of the fun coach, throw the ball around, do whatever, but the other coach knows when we need to pull it in. And the girls appreciate that, because they can see both sides, and so they can take both coaches' value and mold that together. But yeah, it's I think, again, it is hard to try and navigate all those challenges, and it's going to be challenges that are probably going to be there, as I continue to go through the journey. But yeah, it's been an exciting time, and it's good things to reflect on.
Yeah, and I think all those challenges are, thank you for identifying those, because I think those challenges are across all the spectrum. The first one was getting burnt out. If I think about life, we all get burnt out. I know I get burnt out. People out there doesn't know what you're doing. When you want to do the best that you can, or you strive to do the best, the burnout comes in. The second one that you mentioned was, well, I'm going to go through the different ones. The second one was the what if. We're so worried about the what if this happens, that we forget about what's in front of us right now. And we're all guilty of that. We're all guilty of, unless we train our minds to go, hey, we're just going to focus on the present. Our mind's going to go on, hey, what if this doesn't happen today? What if I don't pay the bill tomorrow? What if my boss says this year? What if, and if we keep doing that, then the people in front of us don't actually realize we're not there, and they just, disconnect. And the third one that you mentioned that we all have, whether we like it or not, whether is the comparison. We do that. Whether you're a high schooler going into university, whether you're university student at university, whether you are in the job market, we always compare. And this is crazy stat out there when you're looking at the job market and you're looking at a job description and your own abilities, you always second guess that the job description yourself because you're comparing yourself and go, hey, why should I apply? So, for example, I think Tane's got better coach than me, therefore I'm not going to apply, which is totally off your hands, right? So, all the challenges that you mentioned, the challenges that everyone faces in life, and yours was in the coaching context, so it's pretty real. And like you said right at the end there, it's gonna come up, it's gonna crop up all the time, unless you become aware of it. So that's beautiful. I want to shift a little bit of focus here, Tane. This has become more than a reflection, actually more of a conversation, which is beautiful.
Yeah.
In amongst all this here, Tane, you've also been doing your research, and how's that been for you? Because you, like you said before, you've given 100% to your coaching, but at the same time, you're trying to complete your honors thesis at the same time, which also requires you to be fully committed in a certain level. What has that been like for you?
It's definitely been a challenge. Like, I'm going to be honest, I think it's not been what I thought it was going to be. And I think now I'm okay with that. But in certain points of the year, it has been a challenge to, there's been times where I've considered pulling out of honors. And that's not to say that the honors program isn't great or, stuff like that. But it's just, you have to realize how big of a commitment is. And I think, there's small things that I would change about my honors, and anyone going back and looking back on any work, always has those reflections of things they could change. But I think for me, it made me realize how important it is to be passionate about your research question. And I guess because at the same time, I'm having all these amazing, opportunities and experiences with coaching, that I almost have let the honors dissertation go as a result of that. And I think because too, postgrad is just this crazy whirlwind of, you don't have many lectures, you don't have a big cohort anymore, so it's much more individualized. And I said it's crazy because, as you've seen through my journey, I've always been quite self-motivated and driven to get through all of undergrad. And then this year, not necessarily taking a step back, but I think, it's crazy to think that because there's not as strict deadlines and there's not a big cohort, and because your deadline, it's all based on you. There's just something about it that it's, you're not motivated the same to get it done. And that's been a huge challenge for me, especially when I know how important the research I am is doing. But I think also too, because research, like only now am I getting back into the real passion behind it, because I think when you're doing all the underlying stuff like the methodology and the literature review, and you haven't had a chance to look at your results, it kind of makes you double guess why it is you're doing this research in the first place. But at the same time, I think a benefit of my research and my part-time work is that going into after school care and working with these kids at one of the primary schools here in Dunedin, I've been able to live part of that experience of what it is my research is doing. And I think a lot of people miss that in terms of, seeing a problem and they go, okay, I'm going to research it, but they don't actually live the research. And so I guess
So,
yeah.
for our listeners, what is your research? I know what it is, but our listeners have no idea what you're researching. Tell us what that's all about. Yeah.
Yeah. So at the moment, I'm looking at the Healthy Active Learning Initiative, which is in, I think I've been in 300 schools in 2020, and then there's been another 500 schools this year to have like a control. The control schools have come in now as part of the intervention so that we can look at baseline and further on. And so my particular interest has been around longevity of a government initiative. And so looking at whether this initiative has increased physical activity outside of the school hours, because I think for me, being a huge sport person myself and being an advocate for physical activity, I think we put so much emphasis on school, which is great. But after 15, 16, 17, 18 years of school, all of a sudden you leave and those support systems are gone. And so I think all these initiatives, as great as they are to, increase PE lessons in school or increase physical activity for children, we don't give them the support structures to figure out how they can associate with the club or associate with enjoying going for a run or walking their pet or whatever it might be. And I think for me, that's where the longevity comes, is that if you can say that children outside of school are still, going to play, whatever that may look like for them, I think that's more powerful than saying, oh, we've increased PE lessons in school and kids are more active in school, because school's not going to always be there. And that's been a huge driver for me is, yeah, if is it leading to outside of school hours? Because particularly over the last decade or two, there's just been so many government interventions within schools of how can we increase physical activity. We bring in free food to schools. We bring in nutrition advice. We bring in sleep advice. We have all these different programs running at the same time. And so part of my concern is that we're going to lose all the interests from children because they just simply don't know what is relevant anymore because we're constantly changing the message. And so for me, it's about, yeah, longevity and physical activity so that children are confident to do it outside of school. And that, leads to hopefully lifelong lessons and implementation of physical activity.
Yeah, it's a really important piece of work because, as you say, it's all cool for us to do stuff in schools. And like you said, at some point in time, a young person will leave school. And has that all come into play? Has it actually made a change? Because I think the biggest problem in New Zealand, and I guess in lots of the Western world, is obesity and those comorbidities. And we're seeing lots of young people are obese in New Zealand, and I guess this is where they're trying to bring those initiatives in. But if those initiatives are only stopping when the day they leave school, then is it actually working, or is it working while they're at school, so reducing obesity? It's a really crazy, crazy, crazy secular system. So it's really awesome to see what the research will find. But I guess, like you said before, is trying to balance the two with them in terms of your research and life is so challenging. And I always laugh at the start of the year when I meet honest students and they say to me, "Oh, I've got the whole year to get my honors done. I'll be fine. I'll be sweet." I always have a bit of a laugh because when it comes down to the last few months, everyone's like, "Oh, damn," because like you said before, because you have so much unstructured free time, tomorrow becomes a reality. Oh, I'll do it tomorrow, or there's no, it just changes. And the passion that you had at the start and day one for your project versus in October, it's very, very different because
Mm.
things have happened. So it's an age old thing that happens to lots of people that end up doing postgrad. So yes, it's pretty funny me seeing you do that because when we had our chat at the start, like, oh, how's it going? Like, yeah, I'll be all right. And when I spoke to you yesterday, like, I've got it covered, but it's been challenging. So yeah, it's what a journey, for you, and obviously all the other cool things that happen in your life at the same time as well.
Yeah, I
Um,
think too, like, for me, I just think postgrad as well, like it's a lot of learning that you have to realize in amongst it, like in terms of passion around your research question. I think that's so vital, but also going into it quite naive just in general, like I
it's a
think
big
we
jump, right?
often,
It's a big
yeah,
jump, right?
it's a huge jump, but you also realize you don't know a lot, like it's a crazy paradox that, you get through, you get your degree and you're like, okay, cool, I'm finally going to get to be able to do what I want to do. And then you get there and you're like, wow, I really don't know anything. I know a small piece about something,
Yeah,
but I don't know a lot about a lot of things. And that's the cool thing. And I think part of the reflection over next year, even though I won't continue study, is just realizing that there's so many different avenues that you can complete research in. And I think too, it's a cool avenue because there's no pressure on you to, you do your research when you want to do it and you get to dictate what happens and where it happens. And I think being able to step back will allow me to see some of the other options that you can do, because I think part of the struggle this year has been, it's been so ingrained that I've always wanted to do, like right through, I've done 8 papers in undergrad each year, and then doing the research internship and then going straight into honors. It's always been study, 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 and trying, as you say, do all these other things at 100%. And it's just got to that point where it's not sustainable to do that. But I think because we're so ingrained to do it, we just carry on doing it because we think that's the only way. Or in actuality, looking at some of the other research, uh, people around me who are either, doing it part time because they got family, or they're doing it from home because they have the ability to do that, or they're doing it based on their experiences of what they live and breathe. There's just so many other ways that you can take it rather than having to do it the traditional way of, being still in Dunedin, still, grinding away and not really having that real world impact. And I guess that is my one, I guess, disheartening part of my honors, if I can put it that way, is not being able to reflect the true essence of what it is I was trying to achieve. But and because for me, it's much more about going back into those communities and showing them what my research actually meant. Like I think too often we get caught up in the academic side of things, which is although cool, in reality, there's probably going to be less than 100 people that read my honours dissertation over my lifetime.
If you're lucky.
Yeah, if I'm lucky, compared to, if I could go back into the community and say, hey, this is what's happening. Or, I've actually put time into having a look at some of the stuff that we can consider, we could implement, we could have interactions so that we can achieve better results. And that's just made me realize, like, yes, we look at academia as this great and amazing thing, and it is for some people, but I've realized for me, I'm much more community focused than academia focused, and that's absolutely fine.
And that's really cool because I think you needed this year for that to happen. If you had just finished undergrad, I think this is the beauty with postgrad. I think postgrad gives you that chance to look at academia from a different lens, but also your education from a different lens. When if you finish your degree and you got into a job, you go, cool, cool, cool. It's a bit like when we had Kendall on and she went straight, boom, boom, boom. And then she realized later on that actually, hey, this wasn't a passion. And this happened for you right now when you're actually academia. You've always driven to be an academic because that was success in the world where you came from. But now you actually, wait a minute, I've done the success bit, but now my actual success and my passion comes from a whole different way, which is beautiful. And there's nothing wrong with that there. I think that's a key message today, that it doesn't actually matter where that passion comes from. When you come back to your passion, you go, hey, it doesn't have to be a piece of paper. You can come from the fact that, hey, for you, this year it's been, hey, coaching, or it's been the fact that you want to work in communities. And it's not downplaying your academic prowess at all. You're just going, hey, I got that, but that doesn't define my success or my passions, which is really, really beautiful.
And that's probably something that kept me in it, is because I always knew that honours in terms of the academic side of things wouldn't be a struggle because academically I've always done quite well. But it makes you realise that there's got to be other things that keep you in roles or anything that you're doing. Because, again, just because you can do it doesn't necessarily mean you should do it. And I think sometimes, we don't reflect on that often enough. And we continue to do it because we can, not because we should or
That's right. Exactly. Crazy. So Tane, this was meant to be just a short conversation, but it's been 45 minutes or so, which is pretty cool. I think we very often just bring guests on and we just talk to them, but we forget about our own reflection. So beautiful. And I'm going to do the same thing that we do with all our guests. Our podcast is called Basket of Knowledge. What piece of knowledge would you like to put into our basket over the year that you've had in terms of whether it's the honor space or the coaching space or whichever space you'd like to put into?
I'm gonna ask for two.
You can have two. You can have two.
For me, I think the first thing is just knowing the power of getting to know people. I think in a world that continues to be crazily hectic and, we're constantly going from one thing to another, you don't realize how impactful it is to know someone's name and know what they do within their life. And that doesn't mean that you have to know everything, but, my ability to be successful in some of these roles that I've had this year, particularly in coaching, have come because I know a few small things about the players so that when I have discussions with them about these kinds of things, they realize that I do care about them and it's not just about the sport. And I think, we so undervalue the importance of getting to know people. And then from a young person perspective, I've got to put this all back into perspective that I still am, early 20s, is just the ability that you have as a young person to go out and achieve things you don't realize you can achieve. And I think it's true for everyone, in any space of your life, it's so true. But I think, especially with young people, we always have this mindset of we don't have enough experience yet. We don't have enough backing or references or people to support us in whatever it is we want to achieve. But the reality is you don't know unless you put yourself out there. And I think we just cut ourselves so short because, again, we look at, there's other people that have more experience, they have more opportunities, and they've always been there. So why would I get a chance to have an opportunity in these spaces? When I applied for the South Island Scorpions role, I didn't think there was a chance that I was going to get it because I know the quality of the coaches in the South Island. And as I say, some of those coaches who have coached New Zealand teams or, done amazing things and been around for quite a long time how am I going to get in there with this being my first year, in this role? And the same when I applied for the trustee role at Sport Otago, that although I didn't get, I've at least put my name out there and got experience in other ways. And I just think as young people, we sell ourselves short way too often because we see we've got A, B, C, but we don't have D. So I'm just not going to do it. I'll do it further down the track because then I'll have all of it and I'm going to be successful. But why, I guess it goes back to the question of why wait? And, those roles aren't going to always be there. Those opportunities aren't always going to be there. And yeah, if you get turned away now, it doesn't mean that you're always going to get turned away. But if you don't put yourself in to begin with, you're never going to get where you want to go.
Beautiful. Two great learnings. I think, taking time to get to know somebody more than just how they can help you as a lot of people get to know somebody in terms of being very selfish. I'm going to get to know Tane because I want to find out more how my world can be improved versus I just want to get to know Tane just because. Very, very different. I think that's the big difference when you get to know people. And I think the second one, as we've had our last few podcasts, we've shown that, it doesn't matter what your age is, you can start doing things with Lola, with RP, with yourself as well. I think, like you said just before, just put your name out there. The worst that can happen is someone says no. And so what? They say no, but I think a lot of times people say no to themselves before other people can say no, or even yes to them. And I think that's the biggest thing with a lot of humans, actually, like you said, it doesn't matter what space you are in your life. When we say no to ourselves, we are robbing someone else from saying yes to us. So, those are two really, really fantastic learnings there. I try and incorporate those into my life as well. Because they're great, they're fantastic. And, I see how you do that pretty well. And this has been great. We don't take time. I think that our very first podcast I spoke to you, that was 95 episodes ago when we had that chat there, and as we've done a lot since then, so it's really, really awesome. So thank you for taking time to jump on today. Thank you for the chat. Lots of learnings in here. I mean, I'm very lucky I know you're out of this podcast here, so which is great. So for our listeners out there, hopefully you have seen that the other side of Tane, not just someone who hosts a podcast, but also there's a lot more going on. For our listeners out there, hopefully there's something that you pick up today. I know I've learned a lot today, and if you haven't learned something, go back and listen again because you will find something. And as always, don't forget to put something into your basket of knowledge over the next week or so. Thank you very much. Ka kite. Thanks, Tane. Peace, everybody.
Nice. Thank you for listening to Baskets of Knowledge.
Yeah, we hope that you found something useful to put into your basket of knowledge. And as we said before, remember to put something little into your baskets of knowledge every week. And as always, feel free to like, comment, and share this podcast. Thanks, everybody. Bye.